Ron Toy with the Ron Toy team, Cross Country Mortgage, back at it live last week, dealing with the flu, possibly COVID, and I was out. It was horrible, but happy to come back, giving you guys live updates and giving you updates on the markets. Today is going to be a little bit longer live than I normally do because there's some important stuff that I want to share, especially with all that's going on in the media and just in general. And so let's get into it. I'll bring up the slides. Remember, if you join late, I always post these to my YouTube later so that you can catch up, go back and reference the information because this stuff is super important. And you're going to find out more why as we go through this live because I'm going to show you some of the reasons why fear tactics are used in the media to control and manipulate people. So thank you for everybody who's joining. Again, my name is Ron Toy with the Ron Toy team at Cross Country Mortgage. I'm a licensed residential mortgage loan officer. I'll give you guys an update on what's going on in the market. So let's get into it. I'm going to pull up the first slide so you can see what's going on and what to expect this week. So let's go. Background. And I saved the slide, so let's get into it. So what kind of economic reports and data that's going to come out this week that could impact mortgage rates? And we're going to go into it. We're going to ask why. So I'm going to move my head so that you can see this better and screenshot it so you can save it for later. Again, because what I do here is empower people to make an informed decision so that you're not in a fear state. You're in a emotionally calm, regulated state. So you are making what's a good decision for your current and long-term financial goals. So let me move out the way so you can screenshot this information. This is this week's important data reports that are coming out because it's jobs week. As you can see, tomorrow JOLTS, that's going to be big. Continuing jobless claims, unemployment rates. These are big factors that the Fed uses to determine if their monetary policies are working. And some volatility in the job market is what they're trying to, and they say avoid, but it's one of the reasons why they haven't made cuts until last week throughout the year because they're like, man, inflation's down, everything's down, but unemployment was still doing very, very well. And then they started seeing cuts, and now they're like, well, we need to cut the Fed fund rate. And they're going to continue to cut through the rest of the year. But as you can see, this week is going to be important because we're starting to see the markets dip. We've already lost 50 basis points from where we were last week. That's why it's important to listen and have good conversations with your loan officers because you want to make sure that you have a rate lock strategy in place so you don't miss these opportunities, especially if you're looking at refinancing. Because let me show you what the markets are doing. Boom, here we are. Move out the way so you can screenshot it. As you can see, we're at 101.19 on the 5-year UMBS 5.5% coupon. That's pretty much what everybody's trading on. You see last week and the last 2 weeks, we were up 101.50, 101.56, 101.6. So we've lost about 50 basis points. The lower that number, the higher the rates. The higher the number, the lower the rates. But we've had massive recovery since July. So this is good news. And we're still doing better in rates than we've seen in a very long time. So this isn't meant to scare you. It's just meant to show you that recovery isn't going to be straight line. There's going to be some ups and downs, and you want to have that conversation with your loan officer. That's what's going on right now because there's going to be volatility. Who knows what's going to happen with the market with the jobs reports that's coming out tomorrow and the rest of the week. And a lot of these things are speculative reports that move the market, and we go from there. So you've got this. And why is this stuff is important? Why do I talk about this every week on my lives? It's important for you as a consumer, like I said, to be in an emotionally regulated state. Because who benefits from your fear? Because as you know, right here, this is going to show you a graph of mortgage interest rates, prime rates, since 1974. And I've got certain ranges highlighted because as you can see, the normal range between 5 and 10%. If you look at the averages since 74, there was a short period of time for the last 10, 12 years where rates were under 5. That's amazing. But for the majority of history, mortgage interest rates range between 5 and 10%. Right now, they're in the low 6s, high 5s. Amazing. There's more to this than most are telling you, and I want to make sure that you are informed. Let's go to the next slide. What are we seeing online? Everybody who's ever been on YouTube knows that there's clickbait, fear bait dork level advertisers that got to make it sound like the sky is falling. Oh, this is the end of agents because NAR settlement, and this and that. Agents aren't worth anything. And they're just commentators on YouTube or in their parents' basements yelling at how hot the Hot Pockets are. Same thing with over here. There's going to be a housing market crash. I can't tell you how many people were predicting a housing crash in 2023 and beyond. And what did home prices do so far this year? They've appreciated almost 6%. This is important for you to know because a lot of people put off buying a property or selling because they thought there was going to be some kind of crash in the market, and it just isn't coming because there's different reasons for that. We'll touch on it. But what I want to go over on this live today and answer questions as well, obviously, put them in the comments. And thank you for everybody who's joining. But this is important. Why? When people push fear, question it, because who profits from your fear? And this is what we're going to go over today. Is a lot about the state management. And it's important to me because in sales and in financial industries, we are dealing with people in the top 5 most stressful positions they're in their life. Buying a property, they do it 2 to 3 times. So we as professionals should help people move through state management so that they are making a prudent and suitable decision for their long-term and current needs and goals. And if you look across the board here, and this goes into politics, investing, buying, selling, state management. When you see, as people move from a calm state to a terror state, their functioning IQ goes down, their processing center where they're making their decision changes. And this is why I always stress, who profits from your fear? Who is in benefit if you are terrified and froze in place and can't make a decision? That's who you need to make sure that you're paying attention to and who's pushing the information. When the same 5 companies that own everything also own the media, who benefits? That's what I am stressing out on, because this is the part where it's important on these lives and why I talk to more than just buyers and sellers. This is for investors. This is for real estate agents, loan officers, because we have to take control of ourselves as well and help our clients because we have to control what we can control. And when people are trying to get you to focus on what's outside of your control, that's because they don't want you to go on the inner work to heal and start to identify who's the potential threat. Because when you start to understand yourself and love, you are making decisions in a totally different position. And this is important for you to see because, again, what I've said over and over, and I'm going to stress on this live, who profits from your fear? And we're going to drill this in because as we get to the last slide, it's going to be very clear why there's been a concerted effort to get people to wait on buying or selling. And it's going to be kind of jarring for some. But I'd love to hear your comments, questions in the section. I will answer them as they come along. I don't have mods. I don't do that. I'm not great with tech, but I'm here to help educate. So let's go. What can we control? We can control how we act, react, and communicate. Our boundaries, we're in control of that. Our goals, we are in control of setting our goals, our thoughts, our actions, all of it. The outside stuff, what people do, what people think, what people are saying, we can't control that stuff. And if we focus on those things, we aren't going to be in control of ourselves. We're going to make irrational decisions. And so let's talk about the brain. Screenshot this stuff. That's why I keep moving out the way. I'm not a neurologist, a neuroscientist, but I read a freaking ton and I study this stuff because 1, I like to master myself, and 2, be able to communicate this to my realtors and partners when I do lunch and learns and help them move themselves through an emotional state so that they can better serve their clients. Let's get into the next one. Boom. This is the tree of regulation, coming back over our brains, cortex, everything. You got to see this as we continue to move through it because they don't want us up in our best and highest self because that's when we're able to reflect on the future and plan and strategize versus reacting and having these hypervigilant states where we're not really having conversations with each other. We're assuming, we're fighting, and we're attacking. And again, who profits from our fear? Who profits from our fighting? And this is why I'm going to stress this on the live because it's all connected. Investments, wealth, all of this stuff is connected. And again, we're going to go over rates because I talked about this earlier. Why? I'm a mortgage loan officer. This is all connected, but I want to bring this fear of back down into regulation state because your mortgage, your home appreciates. You get equity two ways: for savings through principal balance reduction and through appreciation. But I'm going to key on rates because some people are like, oh, I wanted to wait to buy until rates were a certain number. And here again, this is right from Freddie Mac, prime rates since 1970s. They were up near 20% for prime rates in the 80s. You can see the statistical average across the board in that short period of time where they were under 5%. So you don't want to make a rule off an anomaly. You want to make a rule off of the averages. And so don't wait to buy for rates to be in threes and twos. There's opportunity, but let me show you why that's going to cost you big time. Again, some people are waiting and they're complaining, but when you look at the average car note, those rates were, over 7 and 8 and 10%, and credit card rates. But somehow the media has convinced people to wait on buying a home for rates to come down. Yet when we look throughout history for depreciating liabilities and debts, people are quick to sign up. We have $1 trillion in debt, over $1 trillion in debt right now on credit cards, and people are continuing to rack it up, and it makes sense. The economy is sucky right now for a lot of situations and for a lot of people. And this is reality. But avoiding to buy for a hypothetical wish is only benefiting the huge hedge fund companies and private equity groups that have plans to buy 30 and 40% of the inventory across the country. And they're doing it right now. And they're doing it through misinformation campaigns on social media, convincing people to wait to buy. And here's some of the key data that I'm going to continue to show. Why it's different than 2007 and 8. This stuff isn't sexy. I know this isn't what people want to watch at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, but I got to tell you, because it's a passion in my heart, because I don't like seeing the least. People don't get this information normally. Nobody's sitting down and explaining to people that about housing formations and housing completions and how back in 2007 and 8, when we had that market crash between that time period, housing completions, meaning builders completing homes, versus formations, people moving out and increasing demand for property, was out of balance for over 10 years in the opposite direction. That's what caused housing prices to fall. And we're going to go over that. But yet since 2015, it's totally different. Now we've had way more formations than completions, and we're not keeping up with demand. Plus, we're having private equity buying up all the inventory. The normal buy cycle for a first-time home buyer is 3 to 6 years. That means that house comes back to the market, increasing inventory. Now with them buying up 30 and 40%, they're not buying it to sell. They're buying it to hold because it controls and manipulates a market. This is causing a major problem. That's why prices continue to go up across the country. And I'm going to continue to show you this and shout it at the rooftops, not for fear, but to empower people to make their decisions. Because again, people are focused on what happened in 2007 through 11, not understanding the data and why that will never happen. Back then, there were stated income loans, meaning you could tell me you made 500 grand a year, maybe you made 50, and we weren't really checking that. We weren't verifying it because if you had decent credit, like I said, it was stated income. You could say whatever you wanted to say, and that's what they would just go with. Balloon payments, balloon mortgages, versus interest only for the first couple of years, and then it ballooned and all was due, and that's why we had the huge foreclosure boom. And back then, I was doing property preservation. So I was the guy going to properties for banks, cleaning out the properties, evicting people, and it was soul crushing. And I will never see that again. I will never allow people to experience what I saw in that time period when I was doing property preservation. It was devastating. And it was a lot of people who got over leveraged, thinking that they could refinance later. And when those bubbles burst, they couldn't refinance because property values went down. And I'm going to show you that they got stuck. And it was due to greedy bankers who didn't get held accountable. But this is the home price appreciation data since 1942. You can see how fast homes were appreciating in the 2000s and why builders and, people started to feel like, oh yeah, nothing could ever happen. 10, 14, 2. But all of a sudden, 2007 through 11, we had depreciation. Homes values started getting cut. But look at every other freaking year. Look what happened between 2012 through 2022. 2023, home prices average appreciation was near 6%. This is huge. This is why I'm trying to help you get out of an emotional state so you can look at the long term. The reason why private equity groups and huge investors are buying property, back in the day, they didn't want to buy property in mass because the management would have been a nightmare of that many properties. But now, because the internet has shrunk, because we've got the ability to connect across the globe through different management firms, the internet, obvious, that has now made it to where big, huge corporations could have thousands of properties under management and not have to be concerned with the management of those properties because they can delegate it out. And you see returns like this. Because let's take 2020, for example, because there's lots of years where properties went up 10%. Say they bought a $400,000 house. And as an investor, you got to put 20% down. So that's 80 grand. And the property goes up 10%. Well, in that year, that $400,000 house now goes to 440. So you spent 80 to get back 40. 50% return on your money is huge. In this stock market, we want to see 10% return at least, which is the average return on index funds over the last 30 years. 10%, we love 10%. But think about it. If you take $10,000 and let's call it 10,000 shares and it goes up 10%, you made $1,000 that year. But if you take that same 10,000, because as a normal person who is able to purchase a property, not as an investor, and there's down payment and closing cost assistance programs, but let's say it took you 10 grand to get that $400,000 house. You then make 10% on the 400,000, the property value, not your cash on cash investment. So now that goes up 40 grand. So now your home is worth 440. So off of your $10,000 investment, you made 40 grand. So now you 30,000 net profit off of your 10,000 investment. And this is just off of the purchase and the appreciation. We're not even talking about equity gains through principal balance reduction and also tax benefits. So of course, corporations want to see 50% return instead of 10% return and 12% return. And there's years that's 20%. Look at 2021, 20%. And if they control the inventory, they control the appreciation rates. It's like in Hearts. I don't know if you've ever played Hearts, but you try to shoot the moon where you're getting everything. That is what they're literally doing to us right now. But us regular individual loan officers are helping people so that they have control over their long-term goals. One of the key pillars to building generational wealth is home ownership. And for a large portion of our population, it has been withholden from them. And we have to fix that. And it's only going to happen through us talking. And it's one of my passionate things that I'm here on this planet to talk about is to fix those disparities. And so, again, I talked to you about this. I'll pull it up later, but I want to get the background out so I can just focus and talk. Hopefully you screenshot it, all this information, but it's huge. If you have questions, put it in the comments. But buying property is one of the key ways to build long-term generational wealth. And if you have wealth, you have power. And when elites and the people that have been in fear of regular people talking, communicating, bridging gaps, get nervous, they start to do weird things. They start to put out information in the media claiming bullcrap. And that's why I'm here to give you information so that you can make the decision and go search it out. The Fed has a ton of information online. Go to BLS, Bureau of Labor and Statistics. St. Louis Fed, they post amazing information for you to aggregate this data yourself so you can see and study reports that come out. Every regular citizen, American, should be looking at and studying the PCE reports, the personal consumption expenditure reports, the PPI reports, producer price index, the CPI, the consumer price index reports. Hey, how are you doing? We should be studying these reports as Americans because we then can see behind the scenes on the data that is being collected and reported so that we are no longer just getting tossed here and there by misinformation campaigns on media that's owned by the same 5 companies buying up all the property. Because if they can get you and I to not buy, that gives them more opportunity to purchase more property. I do not like that. I want more regular people buying property. And that's why I'm on this app, explaining it and educating it and giving you information so that you can make the decision and answering questions. And there's tons of great loan officers on this app. I say it every single time I'm on this because I don't ever want people to feel like I'm the only one. We're talking Cat Loans, Carlos Munoz. There's a guy named Nick on here. There's so many good ones. You got to go check it out. I was thinking of praying God as a break. Thank you so much. That would be huge. My mom is doing really good right now, actually, and we'll 100% take your prayers. But yeah, after she got care flighted, it's part of why I'm so passionate about this because the industrial machine and the for profit healthcare industry almost cost my mom her life again. And so her specialist somehow mysteriously didn't notice that she had a huge blood clot in her small intestine and it was necrotized and killing her. And if she didn't get care flighted and treated the way she did, she would have passed away last week. And that is just unacceptable because this happened to her before and it was a different situation, but like she was complaining of pain in her stomach and the doctor, her primary care physician just thought she was being hysterical and was like, oh, maybe it was medicine or this, that. Didn't look into it, didn't pay her any credence, even though she's recently had surgery for colon cancer. She has a history of issues in her stomach and intestines. The guy just wrote it off and he's going to pay. Like one way or the other, dude's paying because that almost cost my mom her life. So he's going to go through some things one way or the other. But he's very lucky she didn't die. I'll be completely transparent on that. But if he would have just looked, took an x-ray, he would have seen that my mom's life was in danger. Instead, he disregarded her feelings. And I have a feeling it's because she's a woman. And unfortunately, women have been absolutely treated like less than anything in this country forever. And it's disgusting. And I won't let my parents roll over and just play in the system. I'm like forcing my dad to go hard at these doctors, get answers, and get my mom the treatment she deserves. Because they're old. They think, oh, the system is doing its job. And then now they're starting to see it for a different story. And it's devastating. But goes back into people being educated consumers and moving along in that state. And let me see. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's just unfortunate. It's not just my mom, it's people across our country, and they're not getting the service that they deserve, and they're not getting respected. And then it goes back to the insurance companies, and they're like, well, we have to build the insurance company. We got to get this. It's disgusting. Oh, all of that is in place. Yep. It's all the wheels are turning on all of those things. And but I want more people on here to see these things and to work together because properly managing your equity position and your money can help in these moments to where maybe my parents bought I helped my dad buy his first house 10 years ago. They bought that house for like 100 and something thousand in Bowie. And now it's worth nearly 400 grand, which is huge. And so now my parents have the opportunity to sell their house and take 300 plus thousand in equity that they have to go and retire in confidence and do some stuff. But if they weren't careful and it didn't have me in their life, they could potentially be running into a situation at the end of their life where that entire property is taken by the government or taken by medical debt collectors, and I'm not going to let that happen. And so I'm encouraging them to go ahead and sell now and go live the last remaining years of their life empowered and having as much fun as their little bodies can handle and go from there. But again, buying property is key. Having that because it's hard to save that $300,000 in 10 years for most people. And so for them, it would have been impossible. But because they bought a house and made the payments and just allowed time to do its thing, they have the ability to put 300 grand in their bank account. And that's huge. And for most Americans, they're sitting on more equity than they ever imagined. And some people felt trapped because the mortgage rates were so high back last year, near 8 and 9%. Well, now they're back in the sixes and high fives, and with buy downs, maybe into the fours and threes. And that's why I want to see more people looking at these positions so that they can make the decision that's going to align with their current and long-term financial goals, especially with Social Security and their volatility. And, they have a certain amount of time look back period. And if in property, you got to get this stuff dialed in early. Yeah, and that's where you need to get with a financial advisor and see what your goals are with the stocks. Because some people are on here talking about day trading and doing this and that, and they're not even telling people about the tax implications and that go into some of these things. It's intense. Yeah. buying property, if they don't own it, is going to be the first thing I would encourage you to help them get in with. Because again, if they're paying a rent or something that's paying a mortgage, it's just not their own. But if they do own a property, then it's a good thing to look at some ways to diversify, maybe lessen any kind of monthly obligations by properly utilizing their equity and increasing their cash flow. But there's so many opportunities out there, but not many people are talking about what it actually looks like from their lived experience. Because I've seen so many investors on this app that claim to be investors, and then you look into them a little further and they're like drop shipping on Amazon. Nothing against drop shippers, because I'm sure there's a couple of ones out there that are doing well, but the majority are not. And that's the difference. Like, I'm on here with my lived experience as somebody who's bought and sold multiple properties over the last 10 years and has been in this business and helped over 2,000 families with their home investment journey. And from my own lived experience, I bought a home at the height of the interest rate markets last year in July because I took advantage of other people's fear, in a sense, because they were like, oh gosh, what's going to happen? I know what's going to happen. I've studied and I've done this stuff for long enough. I know rates are going to come down. But when I bought my house, the property appraised for $50,000 over list, and the sellers gave us like 23 or 26,000 in seller concessions. That wouldn't happen when rates are in the 4s and 5%. It does when it's in the 8%. So I took advantage of the market, and that's why I'm trying to help other people do it, because some people wait thinking, oh, I need to save the $200 a month it is when the rates drop a point. But if home prices appreciate at 5% and you're buying a $500,000 house, you're talking some serious money. 25 grand in a year. Trying to save 2,400 versus make 25,000 is like jumping over dollars to pick up nickels, and it doesn't make sense. I want the dollar and the nickel, so I'll just stop twice, and that's what I did with this house. And we bought before having to sell the other one because we properly manage our equity position on our first house we bought. It's huge. They do own property good. Depending on how old they are, you need to get them to talk with their financial advisor to see how they need to properly title and manage their property if they're getting old enough to get into retirement age, especially to protect them against any kind of end of life expenses and go from there. But also get with an estate planner, because Monica and I are going through this right now after her mom passed with probate, and she didn't have any of that set up. Oh, it's been a beating. My dad is a baby boomer, my mom Gen X. Yep. It's the time to have those planning conversations, and some people don't like to talk about it, but literally every single one of us are going to die. And it doesn't need to be as scary as it is if we're just honest about it. We don't have a financial advisor, but a tax person. If you'd like a connection with a great financial advisor, I'm happy to send somebody to you in DM, where you can just have a conversation. You want to make sure there's some questions to ask them specifically to make sure that they're fiduciary and they put your needs and interests first and not just their commission. But yeah, there's so many things that go into that planning stage that a lot of us wait too long to get done. I think we should do it earlier in life. Get your will, get your estates planning done early now, so that you don't have to worry about it later in life when it's a catastrophic event or something bad. Because even if it's not a lot, like Monica's mom didn't leave a lot of money to them. She had a small life insurance policy and a car, and it's still taking months and months and thousands of dollars in probate court to get all this lined up. And it shouldn't have to, if there would have been a little bit better planning up front. So that's why I'm on these lives, talking about it, being real with people, showing them data, showing them information so that we can talk. Yeah. Fidelity a big company. And I'm nothing against them. I have a personal relationship with a financial advisor, Larry Fuzzi with Fuzzi Wealth Management. He's amazing. A couple other people that are great that I can connect you with. Because sometimes when you're working with these bigger companies, you get a customer service agent that might not even be here, and it's just not great service. So even if you're just going to have a conversation with them, it's great just to ask some questions to make sure what you are investing in Fidelity is actually beneficial. Because sometimes those fees, management fees, can be devastating to your portfolio. But yeah, these are great questions. Thank you so much for asking them in the comments. It's huge. And, I want to hear from people. What are they afraid to buy? Are they concerned with qualification? Do people think that the home prices are going to drop? Do people think that global warming is fake? We just had some crazy, crazy situations happen in North Carolina and all the other places that are seeing floods, and how that's going to impact the job markets and everything. It's a lot. It's a lot to process. But the more we talk as people and bring down these walls of separation that makes us feel different from each different area, the faster we get to heal as a collective society and start holding these big power corporations accountable and our government accountable for the things they've allowed us to experience as Americans. For instance, one thing that me and I was just talking with my branch manager about today was we were looking at and talking about how the food industry in our country is allowed to poison us while selling the same thing in Europe without any of that stuff. How are they allowed? And how have we allowed them as a country to get away with this stuff? Most of it is because we didn't know. But now that we do know, because of apps like this and communication, and we can ask our brothers and sisters and friends in Europe and never, hey, what's in your McDonald's French fries? And you find out it's just freaking potatoes and salt and regular ingredients. And then you look at ours and it's like a laundry list of chemicals and insecticides and fire retardant material and all this other stuff. Why is McDonald's allowed to put that in Americans' food and not in other ones and still charge relatively the same price? Why are cereals in our country filled with poisons and dyes, yet sold in other countries and it doesn't? It's disgusting. But this is where we have to talk and communicate so we can start to push our legislators to fix this problem. Oh, thankfully, where we are in Dallas, it wasn't impacted at all by the hurricanes. But what's scary, because there's a lot of climate deniers out there and climate change deniers, and they don't realize that because the waters in the oceans have heated, the time between like tropical and storms and hurricanes are going to get shortened because the water temperatures before, as hurricanes would come through, it's going to take the water from the top of the ocean. And this is a very generalized statement, but it takes the water, it puts in the atmosphere, it does its thing, and then the temperature of the water cools. But because the water is warmer, deeper, it's no longer cooling the surface of the ocean so that the next storm is able to regenerate faster. And we're seeing it all over the place, and it's disgusting. And we're only going to see these storms increase more and more. What's really frustrating to see Trump joking about this at one of his recent rallies, like, oh, more beachfront property. No, sir. No, no, sir. It's not about having more beachfront property for rich people. It's about the lives lost. It's about the insurance costs going through the roof because they're leaving certain spots because they know that it's going to get worse. And we should see this. Insurance companies don't make a 1 year, 5 year plan. They're looking 50, 100 years out. And they're looking at information that we're not looking at because we're not told to. And that's what we have to be paying attention to. Most of the drivers of inflation last year and this year were insurance costs for home and auto. And many people that own homes right now are freaking out because they're getting their new annual statements for what their next year policies are. Some people are seeing their policies canceled. Some people are seeing them double. So what that does is increases their home payment because their mortgage might be fixed, but because they escrow their taxes and insurance, your taxes and insurance can go up every year. So now all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, my homeowner's insurance doubled. So now my payment's going up by $200, $300, $400 a month. And many people can't afford that kind of adjustment. And so that's why I'm here talking about this, to help empower people so they're not surprised and they can make a logical decision. But yeah, when Monica and I go to Europe pretty frequently because of her job, and every time we go there and spend any significant amount of time, we both immediately start losing weight and our gastrointestinal issues start going away. And it's not like we're eating less there. We're eating the same. It's just that the ingredients are cleaner and they don't have as many chemicals and microplastics and drama. And it's sad because America is known as like, oh, look at the fat people in America, they're blah blah blah. And it's intentional because we have a for-profit medical system that wants us sick from as early as possible. And you see that when you start to see that baby formula has lead in it and all these horrible chemicals and food has all of this stuff. If you come to my house and I feed you something that I know is going to hurt you, I go to jail. But these big companies knowingly put chemicals in their stuff and get a slap on the wrist, and nobody goes to jail. Yet thousands and millions of people are unalived every single year by big corporations failing to do their due diligence and making sure that they're not poisoning people. How is this legal? How are they still allowed to operate? How are corporations treated better than citizens? And if I'm not mistaken, it's we the people in the Constitution, not we the corporations, we the political left, right, whatever. It's we the people. We need to be taking our power back as individuals and forcing the government to start regulating industry and not giving preferential treatment to these industries. It's disgusting. So go ahead and ask as many questions as you want. It's important. Definitely need it. Yeah, I appreciate these comments and questions. It's important. Yeah. And see, that's the thing with climate denial. There's no way to, if you look and study the data and listen to scientists, there's no way to deny the fact that temperatures have risen consistently over the decades. And there's a famous saying, like, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. Like, when these people were sounding the alarms in the 70s and 80s, they were ridiculed because of the fossil industry, the the fossil fuel industry. And it's still happening to this day. There's a good show on Netflix like called Don't Look Up, and it's like a commentary on what is going on in our country. We're not looking at what's going on, and we're rushing towards the inevitability of our end, and it's disgusting. And it's okay, raise your hand. We ain't like in class where people are like, oh, this person's asking too many questions. We want this here. This is absolutely important because it helps educate people from a different perspective. Because maybe somebody's never thought or felt confident enough to ask these questions. And I want it here because as a licensed residential mortgage loan officer, I have a unique perspective. And some people never have an opportunity or never take the chance to talk to somebody like me. And I'm just a normal guy who wants to help people and break down these barriers of communication. And I'm not afraid to admit where I failed in the past and where I'm growing in and going forward because it's important. Because if people are too afraid to admit where they've messed up in the past or be real with people, they're never going to be able to connect. And that's the part where our country needs to do a better job of being honest about our past and about where we're headed in the future if we don't pay attention. And so I took a media literacy. Yes, media literacy is important. You need to know who's pumping the information and why and who benefits from it. That's what I was saying earlier in my life. Who benefits, who profits from your fear? Because that's the part where if you look throughout the history of our country and over the last, I'd say, 6 years, it's been very intentional with what I've been studying in different positions, especially after, in 2019, we start to see the pandemic, 2020, and the murder of George Floyd. And we continue to see that stuff really shook a lot of the population in the United States because most of us were funneled information into a certain block to keep certain individuals and people different and separated. And when you start to break down these information, it is eye-opening. And you start to see the reality of our country, the reality of the systems that empowered and all of it. And you find out like pretty much everything we've learned was curtailed, making it seem like we weren't the bad people. It's disgusting. The fact that I did not know that our country bombed its own citizens in Philadelphia, the fact that I didn't know about the Tulsa massacre, the fact that I didn't know about some of these things was infuriating. And so I'm like, I'm going to read everything I can on this stuff and then teach it to people. Because again, especially me being in the mortgage space and understanding guidelines and seeing when certain regulations changed, the fact that we got to regulate something to give inclusion to people shows that we have been not the good guy. And that was only until like the 70s. And it's still, there was redlining and different things that were happening. So people don't get freedoms unless they fight for it. Why? Why is that the case? It's disgusting. We should automatically get these freedoms and then and keep them, but it's never been the case. And it's crazy. It drives me nuts. Yeah, they bombed an entire neighborhood in Philly. It was like 5 or 8 blocks just, and then you find out certain cities were freaking flooded, like Lake Lanier. How is this not more important than anything else to fixing what's going on in our country, because a lot of people have cognitive dissonance. They don't want to admit that the United States has done some terrifically, horribly bad things to people, committing a horrible genocide against the indigenous people of our country. People don't even think about it. They just pass over like it ain't no thing. The fact that we, as a country, eliminated and mass unalived an entire population for something that they claim was godly, manifest destiny garbage. No, we ain't going there. And this is where we do need to be having the truth. Absolutely. The fact that people that were involved in the Tulsa massacre and they haven't been paid back, we haven't paid reparations yet, is embarrassing as a country. Embarrassing, because there's been reparations paid, it just wasn't to the right people who were harmed. And of course, you're going to have this situation, and people are like, well, I didn't do it. Yeah, it doesn't matter if you did or didn't do it. You still benefited from a system. And just break through cognitive dissonance. It's liberating. But if people don't bring the information, they won't ever learn. And if it's not brought to them in a way from different people that look different, then they're never going to have that connection. And so it's important. Did you know that in like 1967 or 68, the USS Liberty was bombed and there was war crimes committed against the United States by Israel? And they weren't held accountable. Oh, it was a mistake. How many mistakes can one freaking place make and get passes, and us as Americans have to fund them continuously before something changes? It's crazy. But again, I'm here doing my best to communicate so people can open their eyes, do their own research, be empowered to make a decision, and implement change. That's what we do. But yeah, it's insane. Philly, there's some amazing history there, but to know that happened and then the United States just wants to turn a blind eye and pretend like that wasn't egregious is so sad. There's some amazing documentaries that people need to watch. I would say start with the documentary 13th. That is freaking mind-blowing, the information on that documentary. There's so many books I could recommend too, especially if you're looking at books by like about the Reconstruction period of our country and just so much. And that's where we're on this thing, talking as people, because it's important. Let's see. How many months around the U.S. military did? Yep, exactly. We fund horrible factions in order to control populations and destabilize countries, and we've been doing it forever. Look at different spots in South America and Central America that we destabilize their country in order to put certain leaders in place that we could control so that we had more control over agricultural, farming and distribution and oil. And like we did it to Chile and Guatemala and Argentina and just different Brazil, all over the world, Sudan, India, like everywhere. But nobody wants to talk about it because they don't want to deal with the cognitive dissonance. They feel that maybe we're not the greatest. And then you look at our education, our healthcare. We have totally messed up because corporations have pumped us this vision of what America is instead of what America was and what it could be. And we're in trouble unless we all collectively work together to fix it. And that's what I'm doing my part. My part is to help people be empowered to make a buying or refinancing decision so they can grow their net worth and have more power and authority behind their name so that they can break free. I don't want people working for the rest of their life. I don't like that machine. I don't like that people are stuck and tied to debt and feeling like they got to be doing this forever. Yeah, and see, my son's in the military, and for me, it's the way that our military industrial complex has been run is different. The military, the people that are in the military are separate from the complex, and like think about it, we spend more on our military than any of the top 5 countries combined, and it's not just that, it goes to contractors who then subcontract the work out to the lowest bidder. Where does that money go? And that's the part where I think there needs to be more accountability is where's the money going? Why is it so expensive, but then you don't get the quality? Why are we spending more on the military when we could cut that budget just a little, and we would end hunger across the globe? The fact that we could end hunger for 40 billion across the globe and it hasn't been done yet is disgusting. Disgusting. It is a policy choice and we could end it, but why don't we? These are the questions we as a country and citizens individually need to start asking. Because why do we have militaries? Why is there even war anymore? The only reason there's war is greed by elites who want more and more power. When you see war, look at oil prices. When the oil prices start to dip, miraculously, we're going to have wars everywhere, blaming this side and this side. And what side gets richer? The people who own the oil. But oil is a sunk cost fallacy. We cannot sustain our future anymore based on fossil fuels because it is going to be the thing that ends our entire way of existing. And the solution isn't to go to space. Space travel and space living is not a sustainable future because we don't have the speed capable to make space travel a model. And that is another frustrating thing. Instead of just fixing the problem here and stopping with this limited mindset, we're looking at every other thing, and it's just crazy to me. Another thing that's crazy was, did you guys see that on that Colorado a couple months back was the first state that put in legislation to limit corporations from being able to use our brain waves to collect data on that and to pretty much read our thoughts. And so we know that this is a technology that is out there, and why is only Colorado doing it? And then you start to look at why are they limiting why are they trying to get rid of privacy protections and different protections like in the Patriot Act? They want access to our thoughts so they can market and make us into cash cows. It's disgusting. Yes, why as a collective are we allowing corporations like Apple and others to exploit countries for drugs, for minerals and resources? It's greed. We don't need to rob other countries for these resources. We need to pay them appropriately and hold the corporations accountable here. And as I say this on our iPhone, this is something we have to call to the carpet. Why are we using stuff from mines that are enslaving people? Why? Why? Extra profit? How much freaking profit does something need? How many billions how many trillions do corporations need? You cannot spend that amount of money. And that's the part where it's like proper taxation of the 1%. When I talk about corporations, I'm not talking about normal, regular corporations. I'm talking about the 5 major ones that own everything. BlackRock, Vanguard, those guys. And you go look at their holdings and it's all themselves and they own everything across the globe. We have to hold them accountable. We have to stop allowing them to drive wars in every country in order to make themselves richer and then blame the people, and they continue to destabilize. And we need to get people talking so that they get away from these magic space daddies that are convincing them that they need to control and manipulate people into subservient natures across the board. But these are long-term things. Right now, we talk about mortgage. We talk about what we can control, how we act, react, and communicate. And that's what this whole entire live's about, and answering questions. And if people have them, otherwise, I know that this has been a little bit longer live, here to help, but I will get you that information for the financial advisor so you can have a conversation with them. And if anyone else has questions, you can book some time on my calendar. There's a link in my bio, but I'm here to help. And I'll pay attention to future posts. One of my friends got their account blocked or kicked off the TikTok because of a mass flagging effort by a person, and that person's about to go through some things. But what I'm going to be asking is that everybody that interacts with me goes and communicates to TikTok to try to help them get their account activated again. Pay attention. I'll put it up there and make sure we do our part to help a small business owner get their account back. And it was one of the main ways they got their money. And Thorn, because of it. Yep. And that's it's not just an Autobot. There was another person that was targeting and going back and reporting old videos. And TikTok needs to do a better job about that stuff. And we're going to be holding them accountable for it seems like they're targeting, because I've said things way worse than what Thorn has ever said and not been banned. And for them to get banned it seems intentional and I don't like it. And I've had other people on here that I follow that are in different minority groups and they've got their accounts banned and over nothing. We got to get this fixed. And the only way we do that is if we collectively work together to call those things and those practices out and not just, oh, well, we'll just do something else. Nah, we're gonna put this together. So I'll keep you posted and go from there. But yeah, that person who went through and systematically reported a bunch of their videos because they didn't like what they're saying has my full attention.